3, 2, 1. Welcome back. So parallel and perpendicular lines in 2 dimensions, so the x and y coordinate system. So these are special lines, and it's not that difficult to try to spot them, obviously, when you are just looking at them. Although I guess the easiest way is probably to get the actual equations and then know what has to be true. So I just want to talk about these 2 particular cases, and then I'll leave it up to you. Okay, so to try to check those examples if you ever run into them. So for parallel lines, so those are 2 lines that basically never meet. So they never intersect at any point, and what has to be true in those? So there's kind of 2 cases that happen with these parallel lines. So first is the case that you see, and those are just 2 lines that never intersect at all. And what has to be true about those 2 cases, they have different y-intercepts, but they have exactly the same slope. All right, so that's what I just point out here. Now, checking the slope when it is in the y is equal to mx+b format is rather simple, because all you have to do is just look at the slopes and see if they're identical or not. Now, when you have a line which is in the standard form, so the standard form, again, so just as a reminder, is ax plus by plus c is equal to 0. And if you want to review that, I'll put a link up above, because I'll talk about that. So in this case, you actually do have to kind of check. So either isolate for y, so put it back into the y is equal to mx+b form, and then you can see if the slopes are identical, or you're going to have to really see, okay, so if those 2 lines, the a and the b have some kind of a coordination between them. Now, I personally don't worry if somebody gives me 2 equations of a line and they're in standard form. I just put them into the slope-intercept form right away. I just isolate, and then I can easily check if the slopes are equal. So finding the slope is the easiest way to see if lines are perpendicular. Now, if your y-intercept is the same, then basically those 2 lines, not only are they parallel, they're basically the same line, right? They fall right on top of each other. So that is also sometimes something that you may want to think about, is so when you have 2 parallel lines, but if they collapse on top of each other, so meaning they have the same slope and the same intercept, then it's the same line. Now, what about lines that are perpendicular? Well, lines that are perpendicular, we say that they have, we designate it with this little square. This little square means that it's a 90 degrees, okay, between them. Okay, so you have a 90 degree, okay, between. So I could kind of rotate these 2 lines and then check, okay, visually if that happens. But you have to be careful, because our eyes can fool us, right? It can not necessarily be exactly 90 degrees. It can be maybe like 88 degrees, and in our eyes they look perpendicular, but they're not exactly perpendicular. So the easiest thing to do when you're checking if for lines that are perpendicular is to check if the slopes are negative reciprocals of each other. Now, what is a reciprocal? So that is something from fractions. So let me maybe just do an example. Okay, so if you have, okay, so 2 over 3, the reciprocal of this would have been 3 over 2. All right, so when you say negative reciprocal, okay, then that means that the negative reciprocal would have been, you would have to have a negative in front here. And when you multiply the 2 slopes, it gives you an answer of -1. So for instance, if I take 2 over 3, if that was one of the slopes, and I multiply it by -3 over 2, so notice that the answer is actually -1. So checking for negative reciprocals, all right, with slopes, that means that when you multiply them together, they should have a product of -1. Now, for whatever reason, if you have a slope which is a whole number, so let's say if the slope was, let's say, 5, and you want to find what the negative reciprocal of that is, don't forget that 5 is the same thing as 5 over 1. So taking the reciprocal, which is just swapping these over, is 1 over 5. And the negative, okay, would have to be that. If the number is positive, so for instance, if you have this, so if you have something like this, -5, then the negative reciprocal is 1 over 5, okay? But it is not negative anymore, right? Because this is negative right here. So that's what you have. And again, if you multiply these through, you're going to get -1. So that's how you can actually check if lines are parallel and perpendicular. So I hope that you found this useful. I do encourage you to try to watch all the videos on the lines with the y is equal to mx plus b form and the standard forms as well. All right, we'll see you in a future video. Thanks for watching. Bye, everyone.